In this video, I'm going to show you how to keep your lawn free from those grass damaging pests. So let's get out of the weeds. Now, as I get into talking about some of the insects that we're going to be dealing with in our lawn that can harm our grass, I want you to start thinking about your overall approach to lawn care. And I want you to think of it in two ways: preventative and curative. So now whenever any of us got started into doing anything with our lawns, we're almost always look at everything from a curative perspective. We go out and one day we don't even pay attention to our lawn, and we look out one day and we have a brown spot, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, what's this brown spot? And we hurry up and we Google search and we look on YouTube and see, like, how do I get rid of this brown spot? And we try to learn. And so the damage has already been done. So now, as you guys are starting to get into lawn care, I want you to start viewing everything from a preventative perspective and start to transition from that curative to preventative. So if you know what we're getting ready to head into with the lawn, you'll know what's potentially going to be coming up, and you can put down things and do stuff in your lawn to help prevent the damage from ever occurring. A perfect example of this is what we do with our pre-emergent applications at the beginning of the season. So we put down that pre-emergent to help prevent us from getting crabgrass that won't normally pop up until we get into the summer when the temperatures are rising. And so instead of waiting to see crabgrass all pop up and spraying something, we put down our pre-emergent ahead of time to help prevent the crabgrass from ever showing up in our lawn. And now this exact same method can be used when dealing with insects that you get in your lawn that will damage your grass. And so today I want to talk primarily about two main ones that you're going to hear about. There's others, but if you control these two main ones, you're going to cover a lot of what the other ones would be doing to your lawn as well. And that is grubs and sod webworm. Before I get into how to prevent them, I want to quickly talk about the life cycle of each of them, and it's very similar between both of them. So to look at the life cycle of grubs, I want to start in June. And so in June, we have the adult beetles that'll begin to lay their eggs all throughout your grass. And so there's several different types of beetles that you'll get the grubs that we're trying to prevent. A common one you'll hear is the Japanese beetle. But anyway, beginning in around June, they're going to start laying eggs throughout your lawn. And what's going to happen is those eggs are going to begin to hatch. And so from June, July, August, we're going to start getting, it's going to be the perfect time for them to start laying eggs. And those eggs are going to begin to hatch. And the larva that hatches from that is going to dig into the ground, just shallow in your soil, and they feed on the roots. And those are the little grubs that we've sometimes seen. And now those grubs are going to be real shallow in the soil, and they're going to begin to just start having a feast on all the grass roots there. And therefore it's going to keep the grass from getting the water it needs, and so the grass ends up dying out because it's not able to get the nutrients because the roots are getting cut off from the grubs feasting. So now that's going to begin, when they're going to begin their feast, is usually around that late August through September, October, even a little bit into November. And then as the temperatures get cool, the grubs are going to dig further down into the ground, and they'll be down there all the way over winter. And then as the spring comes along and the temperatures begin to rise, they're going to come back up towards the surface and begin feasting a bit. Though at this point they're much bigger and they don't eat as much, so they do their most damage for our lawns in the fall. Well, anyway, in the spring they're going to eat a little bit more, and then once you get to the end of May, the beginning of June, they're going to emerge out of the ground as beetles, and the life cycle starts over again. So for us with cool season grass, you can potentially see damage in the spring and in the fall, but mostly in the fall. The reason that is because when they're just new, they go crazy on eating, and they slow down a little bit once we get back into the spring. And plus in the spring, we're getting a lot of rain and we got good temperatures, so our grass is just thriving. So a lot of times, even if you do have some grubs eating your grass roots, they're not able to keep up enough to actually see the damage, as opposed to when we get into the later summer and into the fall, our lawns are already kind of stressed and slowing down, so they're more susceptible to see the damage from the grub. And so what we're going to do is put down a preventative in late May or early June, and we're going to try to stop a life cycle of grubs from destroying our lawn. So what happens is when you put down a preventative this year, it's not really going to be as effective with what's in the ground right now, because we're in the stage where they're going to be now as beetles getting ready to lay their eggs. But what we're doing is we're trying to stop the life cycle from continuing. So now if you go for a couple years in a row of putting down a grub preventative each in the end of May or beginning of June, eventually you're going to really limit the population of grubs that you have in your lawn to a point to where they won't really even be a factor to your grass at all. Next, with Sod Webworm, they run a very similar life cycle, but their method is completely different. Now with Sod Webworm, they are going to be caterpillars that stay on top of your lawn. So grubs are below the lawn into the soil, and then the sod webworms are going to be up on your lawn, actually physically eating the grass blades in that. So the life cycle of them also begins around the same time. So in June, you're going to begin to start seeing what we call lawn moths. So if those of you who have ever been mowing, you're just mowing along and you'll see like a white moth start flying up and then land somewhere else in your grass. That's the easiest sign to tell if you have a potential problem with sod webworms, is you'll start to see the lawn moths flying all around whenever you're mowing in your grass. And so as we get further along into the season over the next month or so, I know I usually start to see them in my lawn. And so if I ever see them coming out, I'll make sure I get a video so you guys can see what I'm talking about. They fly around, and as they're flying around through June, July, August, they're just laying eggs all over the place as they're flying around. And what happens is these eggs hatch in your grass, and then the larvae begin to feast on your grass blades whenever we get into the late summer into early fall, at a very similar time frame that we deal with grubs. And the same thing happens. They begin to feast, they get fat, they're destroying your lawn, and then the winter comes along, they dig into the ground, and then they go down, protect themselves until the temperatures get warm again. They come back up in the spring, feast on your lawn a little bit longer, though not as bad as what it's going to be in the fall. And then they'll change into the lawn moths that we see, and then the cycle starts all over again. So it's very similar to grubs, but grubs are below the ground, and the sod webworms are going to be above the ground. And so they're prevented the same way, usually in the same application that we're going to be doing today. Now I'll put up pictures on the screen of what the damage kind of looks like between grubs and sod webworms. So now with grubs, most of the time when you see the damage to your lawn, since they're eating the grass root, most of the time that grass will actually be able to just pull up just like carpet. So if you ever suspect that it might be grubs and you see the brown spot in your lawn, reach down and grab it and see if the grass just pulls up from the ground. If it pulls just right up, just like carpet, then there's a high chance that your problem is grubs. Plus, once you pull it up, there's a good chance you'd probably see them there in the soil. So now with sod webworms, the easiest ways to see them is to see the lawn moths in your lawn, and then also you'll be able to see the damage actually to the grass blades because they chew on them. Now the caterpillars usually will eat your grass at night, so you're not going to really see them as often during the day because they're going to be feeding usually at night. And so you're mostly going to be able to see the damage from looking at the grass blade, and then also the presence of lawn moths throughout the summer. So how do we prevent these? Well, there's several options that will work really good. And the one that I recommend the most is just to stick with Scott's Grub X. And so this is readily available for any of you who go into the stores. And what this will do is, most of the time you're going to see the advertisements for grubs, just because that's kind of the popular one that people know. But most of these are going to also kill a lot of the other insects in your lawn, including the sod webworms, which I talked about. So now I did go into a hardware store and I want to show you guys some of what I found. The thing I want you to pay attention to is to make sure that you're getting something that is for season-long control. So you want something that's going to be a preventative to help prevent the life cycle of these pests, and not a curative. And so I'll show you here on the screen of one of them that says a 24-hour grub control. Now you don't want to put something like that down in your lawn in May or June, because that's to help prevent whenever you already know you have a problem. So if you go and you see your lawn getting damaged and you want to take them out, then you'd put something like that down. But at this time of the season, we want to put down a preventative to help try to knock out that life cycle, because they're not going to be actively doing the damage to our lawn here in the next couple months. Now, I don't like to get in too much with the active ingredients, because each of those will all have a little bit different active ingredients. And so they all work very similar in the same way, to where they get into the nervous system and then affect their muscles. So it essentially paralyzes them, and then they're unable to feed and therefore die. And so most of the stuff that you're going to get in your store is all going to kind of work that same similar way with how it actually gets rid of them. Another thing that can be deceiving when you're in the hardware stores is because you'll start to see grub control products in the store even in early spring, all the way back in like March, and that when they start putting out their stuff, you'll see grub control stuff everywhere. And that's not really a great time, because for the most part, you're going to get 3 to 4 months of prevention whenever you put a product like this down. So if you were to try to put it down in early March or mid-March, you're not going to get the coverage throughout the full season. So you want to wait until you get into this late May and even early to mid-June to put this down, to really try to knock them out, because we don't want to lose our effectiveness of this product before we get done with the actual threat. And so for those of you who have watched videos from me before, I always recommend getting the Scott spreader, especially when you're starting out with lawn care, just because they're the easiest, because you can just use their orange dial, set it to the number on the back of the bag, and then you can just load up the product and go. So that's the easiest way to put down any product. You can also get these grub controls in a liquid form, but I think when you're beginning and getting into lawn care, liquid forms are a lot more difficult to actually get into, just because it's easier to miss some spots, and your timing for how you have to move around and get all the liquid out is just a little bit more difficult than just loading it up in a simple spreader and going. And so that's all you have to do. Now make sure, as with most of our applications that we put on our lawn, you want to make sure that it gets watered in with about a ½ inch of water. So either time it up with when it's going to be raining within a day or two after you put it down, or just make sure you go out and run your sprinklers or your irrigation system to make sure it gets watered in good, to start activating it and to start seeing a pest-free lawn in 2022. And so I thank you guys for joining me for this video. Now stick around for the next couple minutes. I'm going to be giving you guys an update on lawn watering here, so you guys can know what to look for as the lawns start becoming more stressed as the temperatures rise. Last week at the beginning of the video, I gave you guys kind of a warning of what to expect with your lawns over the next little bit, especially as we were starting to get high temperatures and no rain, especially here. So where you are, you may have gotten rain and the temperatures might have been a little bit mild, but here in Indiana, we've been mid to upper 80s like every day for almost the last week or so, in little to no rain whatsoever. And so I said that you're really going to start noticing a difference between those lawns that are getting watered and those that aren't. And so what I wanted to show you is here right on the property line between me and our neighbor. And so our neighbor back here, they don't have an in-ground irrigation system, so their lawn gets no water. And so you can see as right here on this side, this is their side, and then this is mine over here. And you can just tell a huge difference between the color of the grass already. And so if I show you guys pictures here on the screen of what it looked like here even just a few weeks ago, they were pretty close in color. But now this side where my lawn's getting irrigated is really starting to differentiate itself from the lawn over here that's not getting watered. So now is the time of the year that if you're not watering your lawn, you're really going to notice a difference with the color. And so I'll see you guys next time when we get out of the weeds into a beautiful lawn.